The Sparrowhawk drifted silently in the void, a sleek ship with a scared hull that had seen more than its fair share of interstellar skirmishes. Outside, the cold blackness of space stretched in every direction, pierced only by the faint twinkle of distant stars. Captain Soraya Vale stood on the bridge, her fingers hovering over the control panel. She wasn't nervous, not yet, anyway, but the strange, pulsing signal they'd been chasing for days was starting to make her skin crawl. Captain, we're nearing the coordinates, Lieutenant Juno said, her voice flat but with a hint of tension. The young officer, only a few years out of the academy, was gripping her seat like it was the only thing keeping her from bolting. Vale's sharp eyes flicked to the holographic display that hovered above the console. A ghostly blue circle marked the location of the dead moon they'd been sent to investigate. Scans had detected odd energy readings deep beneath the surface, something that didn't belong, something ancient. You're sure about this? Vale asked, turning to her science officer, Dr. Greel. Greel, a soft-spoken alien with pale green skin, adjusted his glasses nervously. The readings, they're not natural. It's like something's breathing beneath the moon's crust. And there's a structure, a big one. A sense of foreboding settled over the bridge, thick and oppressive. Vale could feel it too. She had been in enough dangerous situations to know when something was off. This was different. The hairs on the back of her neck stood at attention. There was an eerie weight to the stillness. And yet it was the kind of stillness that beckoned, curious, tantalizing. Open a comm channel to command. Let's see if we can't get some backup, Vale said, her voice a cool contrast to the mounting anxiety. Juno hesitated, her fingers poised above the console. Captain, we're not getting through. Whatever this thing is, it's blocking our signals. Perfect. Vale's lips twisted into a dry smile. She didn't need a degree in diplomacy to know what that meant. Whatever was hidden here wasn't meant to be found. Deploy the drones, she ordered, her voice a sharp command that sliced through the tension. Let's see what's inside. One by one, the sleek black drones shot out from the Sparrowhawk, their engines silent against the void. They moved like shadows, darting toward the surface of the moon, where the scans had shown something alive. A massive forgotten prison built into the planet's surface, or perhaps a tomb. Minutes ticked by, each one more suffocating than the last. Then, without warning, the first drone sent its final transmission, a stream of fragmented images, flickering like a dying star. The last image was clear. It was a door, huge, ancient, and covered in alien markings. But as the drone's feed cut out, Vale saw something else, a glimpse of eyes. And then silence. Get us out of here, Vale barked. But it was too late. The ground beneath the moon's surface rumbled. A deep, resonant sound echoed through the ship's hull. The pulse of energy flared to life, stronger, more intense than before. A voice, thick, ancient, and cold, whispered through the comm. You have freed us. The Sparrowhawk hung in orbit above the moon, its systems buzzing with frantic energy. The deep hum of the ship's engines was a constant undercurrent to the growing tension on the bridge. Captain Soraya Vale's eyes scanned the holographic display, where the swirling energy signature was now a blinding red. Whatever they had awakened was no longer dormant, and it was angry. What do we know? Vale asked, her voice a cool command that betrayed nothing of the growing anxiety she felt. Dr. Greel stood at the edge of the bridge, hands wringing behind his back as he stared at the shifting data. His green skin had paled, and his wide eyes darted to the console, then back to Vale. It's not just a structure, Captain. This thing, it's a prison, a gate, a barrier between our dimension and something else. Something older, the entity inside. Ninkarath, it calls itself. It's not alone. The name rattled through Vale like a cold wind. Ankarath, the wound between stars. The ancient horror whose whispers had haunted civilizations across the galaxy. And now it was awake. And what do you suggest we do? Vale's voice was calm, but her grip tightened around the edge of the command console. Greel hesitated, his hands trembling as he input more commands. We need to shut it down. But the gate, it's somehow pulling in energy from the local systems, making it stronger. If we don't act fast, it could destabilize the entire sector. Vale's heart raced. The sector. Hundreds of systems teetering on the edge of war. The Council had sent them here to investigate, not to be the cause of a galactic catastrophe. She needed a solution, and fast. Lieutenant Juno, Vale snapped, her eyes flicking to the communications officer, who was visibly pale but focused. Get me a channel to command. Now. Juno nodded, tapping furiously at her console. Aye, Captain, I can't. The interference from the signal. It's blocking everything. I can't raise anyone. Vale clenched her fists. Then get me something we can use. Anything. Moments stretched on like hours, the only sound the relentless hum of the ship's systems fighting against the growing pull of Ankarat's power. And then suddenly, a burst of static filled the comm system. Nearly there, Captain. We have a team inbound. The voice was distorted, but unmistakably human. Vale's eyes widened. Who is this? What's your position? We're. The voice cut out again, replaced by a chilling screech that rattled through the ship's hull. Before Vale could respond, the ship lurched violently, throwing everyone to the ground. The lights flickered, casting long shadows across the bridge. A deep, resonant rumble filled the air, shaking the very bones of the Sparrowhawk. Vale struggled to her feet, heart hammering in her chest. What the hell was that? Greel was already on his feet, staring at the view screen. It's coming from the surface, Captain. The prison, the gate. It's breaking apart. As the ship rocked again, Vale felt a creeping sense of dread wash over her. This wasn't just an accident. This wasn't some forgotten relic. This was something far worse. We've done it now, Vale muttered under her breath, her voice grim. We've woken something we weren't prepared for. The rumble beneath the Sparrowhawk grew stronger, the vibrations pulsing through the ship like the thrum of a living creature. The walls of the bridge shook with each tremor, and the air itself felt thick, as if the very fabric of space was warping under the weight of something ancient and powerful. Captain Soraya Vale gripped the edge of her seat, her eyes locked on the view screen, which now displayed a crackling red light emanating from the surface of the moon. It wasn't just an energy surge anymore. The whole moon seemed to be breathing, expanding and contracting in a rhythm that was both unnatural and terrifying. The gate was opening slowly like the maw of some cosmic beast yawning back into existence. Report. Vale snapped, her voice sharp but controlled. Greel was already at his console, his hands shaking as he tried to make sense of the data flooding in. The structure, it's not just a prison, Captain. It's a containment field. And the energy readings, they're off the charts. Inkaroth, or whatever it is inside, is starting to break through. Lieutenant Juno's face was pale, her eyes wide as she glanced from her screen to Vale. Captain, we're being dragged into the gravitational pull of the moon. If we don't move, we'll be pulled into its core. Vale's mind raced. They couldn't just leave. The whole galaxy was on the edge of chaos, and humanity had just been thrust into the center of it all. They had woken something that had been locked away for eons, and the Council had trusted them to handle it. Get us out of here, she ordered, her tone like a whip crack. Full thrusters. Now. The crew scrambled to respond, the hum of the engines rising to a crescendo as the Sparrowhawk tried to break free. But it was too late. The moon's gravity was too strong, and the ship's systems began to whine under the strain. Then a new voice, a deep, ancient growl, filled the comms. You cannot escape, it rumbled, its tone a mix of wrath and amusement. We are here. Vale's blood ran cold. The voice was both alien and yet disturbingly familiar. The very air seemed to warp around it, distorting her perception. Is that it? She muttered to herself, more to calm the growing dread than to make sense of it. Is that Ankaroth? Greel's eyes went wide, his breath catching. No, this is something worse. Ankaroth is an ancient entity, yes, but this presence isn't just one being. It's a force. The gravity of the situation hit Vale like a blow to the chest. The gate wasn't just a prison, it was a door. And whatever was beyond it wasn't just a prisoner, it was an army. A cosmic plague waiting to spill into the galaxy. We need to warn the Council, Vale said, a sense of urgency twisting in her gut. Now, Juno, try to break through. Juno shook her head, her hands flying over the controls. I can't. The signal's too strong. They've locked us out. Then the ship jolted again, harder this time. The view screen flickered as the moon's surface split open in a massive explosion of light, revealing a swirling vortex, a tear in the fabric of reality itself. From the depths of that rift, shadows began to emerge, slithering into the void like tendrils of a nightmare. Vale's eyes narrowed. So it begins. The Sparrowhawk lurched again, this time with a force that sent everyone stumbling. They were no longer in control, and as the nightmare from beyond the stars began to rise, Vela realized one thing. Humanity had just started a war it didn't fully understand. But it was too late to stop it now. The Sparrowhawk shuddered violently as it was tossed through the void like a leaf in a storm. Captain Soraya Vale gripped the console in front of her knuckles white, as the bridge was filled with the chaotic sound of alarms blaring. Outside the windows, the moon's surface glowed with an eerie crimson light, and the swirling vortex that had opened in the wake of Enkareth's awakening pulsed with an unnatural energy. Status. Vale barked, voice cutting through the clamor. Lieutenant Juno's hands flew across the controls, eyes darting between the screens. We're losing power, Captain. The vortex is feeding off our energy reserves. Shields are down to 20% and dropping fast. We need to get out of here now. Vale's gaze flicked to the view screen again. The vast cosmic rift swirled with an awful beauty, a shimmering whirlpool of dark light and shifting shadows. She knew what it meant, what it could mean for the galaxy if they didn't stop this in time. But the feeling gnawing at her gut told her the stakes were much higher than anyone could prepare for. Get a link to the Galactic Council, she said, her voice steely. Tell them what we found. Tell them. Her words were cut short by a loud crack from the ship's hull. The Sparrowhawk lurched to the side, throwing everyone off balance. A sharp scream echoed from the rear of the ship, and Vale didn't need to turn around to know what had happened. Report, she shouted. Greel's voice was tight with panic. Captain, the structure, whatever it is, it's reaching out. Something's boarding us. We're not alone. Vale's heart skipped a beat. She turned toward Juno, whose face had gone ashen. We have incoming, Juno said, voice cracking. The signal, it's not human. It's alien, and they're closing in fast. A deep, guttural voice interrupted them then, resonating through the comm system, sending chills down Vale's spine. It wasn't Enkareth. It was something else. We have been watching you, human. You will join us or die. Vale's breath caught. There was no mistaking it now. This wasn't just about Enkareth anymore. Whatever this was, whoever it was, they weren't here to negotiate. Alert all decks, Vale shouted, her voice now a controlled fury. Prepare for impact. Brace for. Her words were cut off by a sudden, explosive force that rocked the ship once more. The entire bridge seemed to shudder as the forward viewports flashed bright, blinding white. Then the silence fell, a heavy, suffocating quiet. Vale's heart was pounding. She could feel the weight of the galaxy's future pressing down on her, and she knew it wasn't just the Sparrowhawk at risk anymore. If the entity beyond the gate was allowed to escape into the universe, nothing would stop it. Then, with a sudden jolt, the ship was violently pulled toward the rift. A voice, sharp and unmistakable, broke through the tension. Captain Vale, this is Ambassador Takvar of the Supremacy Collective. The Galactic Council has officially sanctioned humanity's involvement. Prepare yourself. We are coming to you. Vale closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the weight of the situation settled in. She didn't have the luxury of choice now. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy. Well, looks like we're all in this together, Vale muttered, a dry smile tugging at the corner of her lips. She didn't know whether to laugh or scream, but one thing was certain. Humanity was about to make its mark. The hangar of the Sparrowhawk was a mess of rushing footsteps, shouted orders, and the hiss of pressurized airlocks. The Supremacy envoy ship had docked moments ago, and already the air was thick with the unspoken weight of desperation. Captain Soraya Vale stood at the foot of the ramp, arms crossed, jaw set like stone. The Supremacy emerged, tall, scaled beings in sleek silver armor, eyes like burning coals. At their head stood Ambassador Takvar, flanked by 2 armed guards and a scientist draped in ceremonial cloth. Takvar's expression was unreadable, but there was no mistaking the tension in his posture. You humans, Takvar said, voice low and gravelly, have awakened a species we buried in time. You tore open a wound we thought sealed. Vale didn't flinch. We didn't tear it open. It was already bleeding. We just happened to be the ones who tripped over it. The Supremacy envoy narrowed his eyes. This is not a time for wit. No, Vale replied, voice like tempered steel. It's time for action, and you didn't come all this way just to scold us. Takvar grunted, motioning to the Supremacy scientist, who stepped forward and activated a hologram. A massive structure appeared, ancient, angular, and covered in alien runes. It pulsed with a sickly purple light. This, the scientist said, is one of 6 anchor seals. Enkareth's prison. It's unraveling. If we do not rebind it, the gate will widen, and the entities beyond will spill into this universe. Vale studied the display. And how do we seal it? The Serethi hesitated. With a core reactor detonated inside the anchor, it must be synchronized across all sites, or the chain will fail. You mean blow it up? Juno muttered from behind, arms folded. Why does the solution always blow it up? Greel spoke next, voice tight. Captain, the energy inside that gate is starting to distort nearby systems. If we wait too long, this sector won't have a structure to seal. We have to move fast. Vale exhaled slowly. This was it. Humanity had caused the mess, and now the galaxy expected them to clean it up, with bombs, no less. Her crew looked at her. The Serethi stared in silence. The galaxy held its breath. All right, she said finally. We'll do it, but we need ships, coordinates, and control of the divination sequence. We do this our way, or not at all. Takvar regarded her a long moment. Then with a nod he replied, very well. We are bound to this outcome together, whether we like it or not. The deal was struck. As the hangar doors closed behind the departing Serethi guards, Vale turned to her crew. Prep the ship, plot courses to all anchor sites, and someone tell command that Earth just volunteered for the most dangerous job in the galaxy. Juno chuckled dryly. We always do. Vale smirked. Yeah, but this time we're saving everyone, even the ones that hate us. Outside the viewport, the stars shimmered. The war to seal a god had begun. The Sparrowhawk cut through space, its engines roaring with power, but the tension aboard the ship was deafening. Captain Soraya Vale stood at the bridge, her eyes glued to the tactical readout. They were heading straight for the first of the anchor seals, a crumbling outpost on the edge of a dying star system. The Serethi fleet had already sent their ships ahead, but the road to salvation wasn't going to be easy. And Kareth's forces had awakened, and they weren't about to let anyone stop their release. Approaching the first site, Juno called out, her voice tense as the ship's hull creaked under the strain of acceleration. Vale's eyes flicked to the view screen. Below, the shattered remnants of a dead moon floated in the debris field, the anchor seal barely visible beneath layers of shifting dark matter. Flashes of purple light flickered along its surface, the gate's energy distorting the very fabric of space. It looked like a wound in the universe, raw, untouchable, and growing. We don't have much time, Vale muttered to herself. We've got one shot at this. Greel was at his station, tapping into the ship's systems. Captain, the energy readings from the seal are inconsistent. It's fluctuating with every pulse. If we don't stabilize it before the divination, the reaction could be catastrophic. We need to move in close, but there's no but Greel. Vale cut in, her voice sharp but controlled. We have to get close. It's the only way to plant the reactor and make the core synchronized. No more second guessing. Her words hung in the air, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. The mission was a gamble. There was no guarantee it would work. But humanity had a knack for survival, especially when the odds were stacked against them. Ready for combat? Vale turned to Juno. Always, Juno replied, her eyes locked on the controls. We've got company. The comms lit up with static, followed by a garbled voice. Here, we are coming. Before Vale could respond, a massive shape tore through the darkness, silhouetted against the starfield. A colossal warship, shaped like a twisted spire, loomed in front of them, its hull crackling with the same energy that had consumed the moon's surface. The enemy was here. Shields up, Vale commanded, heart pounding in her chest as the ship shook with the sudden jolt of energy fire. The Sparrowhawk rocked, the force of the blast throwing everyone to the floor. Engines down to 50%, Juno shouted, her fingers flying over the controls, trying to regain control of the ship. We're losing power, Captain. Greel's voice came through, strained. If we don't reach the anchor seal in the next 5 minutes, we'll lose the chance to plant the core. We'll be stuck in this rift forever. Vale's gaze was fixed on the massive warship closing in on them. It was only a matter of time before the enemy unleashed their full force. Ready the detonation sequence, Vale said, her tone as steady as ever, despite the storm that raged outside. We'll make it. We always do. Juno gave her a grim look but nodded. Hey, Captain. As the enemy ship loomed closer, Vale's fingers tightened around the armrest of her chair. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but she knew one thing for certain. Humanity wasn't going down without a fight. They were going to burn bright. And maybe, just maybe, they'd survive the storm. The Sparrowhawk tore through the black void, the ship's engines groaning under the pressure. Captain Soraya Vale's hands were steady on the controls, but the tension in the air was palpable. Around her, the crew worked in frantic silence, every moment a desperate attempt to hold on to control. The massive enemy warship was closing in, its weapons flashing in the distance, streaking toward them like deadly lightning. "We got less than 2 minutes," Greel said from his station, his voice barely above a whisper. His face was pale, eyes glued to his screen as he tried to synchronize the detonation sequence. Juno's hands moved swiftly over her controls, her expression grim. "Shields are down to 10%. We can't take another hit like that." Dell's eyes narrowed, scanning the tactical display. The warship was on their tail, relentless. It fired again, another wave of energy that rocked the Sparrowhawk, sending the crew stumbling. "Brace for impact," Vale shouted, throwing herself against the console as the ship shuddered violently. Her teeth gritted together as the shockwave hit, the metal groaning as if it were about to tear apart. The crew's efforts to stabilize the ship were a blur of panic and precision. Greel cursed under his breath, trying to recalibrate the reactor's core signature. "We need more time. This thing is. We don't have time." Vale snapped, her gaze locked on the glowing anchor seal in the distance. The flickering purple energy was intensifying. The gate was widening, an open wound in space, and every second they spent evading the enemy was one less second they had to close it. "Juno, get us in position," Vale larked. "I need a direct line to the seal. We plant the core now, or we'll all be sucked into that thing." Juno's fingers flew over the console, the ship responding sluggishly as the damage mounted. "I'm trying, Captain, but they're getting closer. They've locked onto our engines. I can't shake them." The enemy warship fired again, the blast knocking the Sparrowhawk sideways, sending sparks flying from the consoles. The ship's interior was bathed in red light, alarms screaming in every corner of the hull. "Damn it," Juno shouted, slamming her fist against the console. "We're not going to make it." "Don't give up yet," Vale said, her voice calm but firm. She wasn't going to let them lose. Not now. With a sharp pull, Vale swung the Sparrowhawk into a wild roll, narrowly avoiding the incoming fire. The ship groaned, shaking violently under the strain. But they were close, closer than they'd ever been. Greel shouted, "The core is ready, Captain, but we need to get within range to activate the detonation sequence." Vale didn't hesitate. She slammed her fist onto the console, her voice a command, a challenge. "Now, Juno." The ship hurtled forward, and the enemy warship fired one last time. But this time, Vale wasn't evading. She was locking in. They were within the radius now. No turning back. "It's now or never," Vale muttered. Juno clenched her teeth, eyes fixed on the target. "Ready, Captain." "Do it," Vale ordered, her voice sharp as a knife. The reactor core exploded into the anchor seal with a brilliant flash of light. A wave of energy rippled outward, tearing through the rift in space like a shockwave. The Sparrowhawk jerked violently, the ship groaning as the blast reverberated through the hull. For a heartbeat, everything was still. Then the gate collapsed, its energy dissipating in a violent, chaotic burst. The Sparrowhawk was thrown back, spiraling uncontrollably into the blackness of space. The crew held on for dear life, the ship creaking and groaning as if it might disintegrate at any moment. And then silence. Vale's breath was ragged as she slowly stood, eyes scanning the viewports. The rift was gone. The warship had vanished, obliterated in the blast. But so had the threat that had loomed over the galaxy. "We did it," Juno breathed, disbelief in her voice. Vale looked at her crew, her people. They had done the impossible. For now, the galaxy was safe, and humanity had once again proven that when faced with the darkness, they were the ones who could bring the light. The Sparrowhawk drifted through the quiet void of space, the stars stretching out like endless pinpricks of light in the distance. The crew sat in their seats, dazed, as if the world had suddenly slowed down around them. The rift that had threatened the galaxy was gone, vanished, sealed, and closed in a flash of brilliant light. The enemy warship that had pursued them was nothing but debris scattered across the emptiness. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence of space seemed to seep into the ship itself, and it was only then that Captain Soraya Vale allowed herself to exhale. She'd done it. They'd done it. Against all odds, they had survived. "We're alive," Juno muttered from her seat, her voice thick with disbelief. Vale turned to her, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah, we are." Greel, hunched over his console, let out a long sigh of relief. "I thought for sure we were going to be space debris by now." The rest of the crew chuckled, but it was a hollow sound. The danger had passed, but the weight of what they had done, and what it had cost them, still hung heavy in the air. "Captain," a voice broke through the tension. It was Takbar, the Sarathi ambassador, his cold eyes still as unreadable as ever. "The Galactic Council has acknowledged your efforts. Humanity has not only proven itself capable of handling cosmic threats, but you've also gained our respect." Vale gave a nod, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the console. "We didn't do it for respect, Takvar. We did it because the galaxy doesn't have the luxury of waiting for someone else to save it." Takvar's gaze flickered briefly, something almost like approval crossing his features. "Your people are unexpected." "That's one word for it," Juno muttered with a grin. Vale's eyes drifted to the view screen again. She saw the Sarathi ships retreating into the distance, their sleek forms blending into the dark reaches of space. The mission was complete, but there was still so much more to do. The rift they'd sealed had been just one wound in a much larger universe, a universe that would never be the same again. "Status on the sector?" Vale asked, turning back to Griot. "We got power stabilizing," he said, "but I'd recommend a few repairs before we head back to Earth. A lot of our systems are still in critical condition." "Noted," Vale replied, her tone cool and practical. "Start with the engines. I want to make sure we're not going to fall apart on the way home." The crew worked in their usual rhythm, the steady hum of the ship's systems filling the quiet. It was almost hard to believe the danger had passed, that the universe hadn't collapsed into chaos. But as the seconds ticked by, and the Sparrowhawk moved further away from the battle's aftermath, it started to feel like maybe, just maybe, there was hope. "We've earned a break," Vale said, her voice softer now. "We've earned many breaks. But for now, let's head home." Juno looked over at her, a grin spreading across her face. "Home, huh? I'd like to see Earth again. I don't even remember what it looks like." Vettel smiled, her eyes far away as the ship drifted toward the distant stars. They had crossed the threshold of the impossible, faced cosmic forces beyond their comprehension, and somehow made it through. But even in the stillness of space, she knew one thing for sure: humanity was not just surviving, they were ascending. And this was only the beginning.